Hello and welcome to another edition of Readership Reflections, where you meet with the readership detectors, and we're here to showcase a category of books that we would love to call classical children's fiction books for under sevens in Nigeria. My name is Shadi Fadepe. In the room with us today, we have the privilege of having a librarian. Her name is Goodness Ignatius, and she's based in Anambra State in Nigeria. And she's going to share her insights as a librarian from a technical perspective of why we may have struggled to find picture books or the Nigerian child that we could term as classical.
Additional Kids Literary Circle. Great to be here.
Timilolu Additional from Readland. Thank you for having me here.
The Bookworm Cafe. Hi, everybody.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ogome from SOPIP Africa. Great to be here.
And we've also got Goodness in our midst, who is here for the very first time. So the question is, what have we found out about classical children's literature? Why has this been a tedious task? Farida, I will throw this question to you because every time I see you, I see 1,000 books behind you. I'm not sure what's happened to your shelf today. Have you purposely closed down the bookshelf today?
That would be interesting. I think that this is actually one of the hardest book selection I've ever done. Like, I've spent days thinking about what books will qualify, and because we restricted it to books by Nigerian authors, it's been difficult. Basically, I couldn't find any titles. I know a few titles that I can recommend, and I would say they're classics, but we don't have copies, mainly because it's hard to get copies, and anytime we get copies, in like 2 weeks, it's sold out. And the hurdle, I mean, the things we have to go through to get copies, it just takes a while for we order more copies. So we don't have any of those. I'm speaking about Chinua Achebe's picture books, the flute, and how the leopard got its claws. Those two in particular, those are the ones that we always stock, but we don't have copies at the moment. It's been really difficult to find classics for under 7 written by Nigerian authors.
I find it interesting that you say they run out very quickly. That tells us that there is a need for them.
There's a demand, a very high demand for them, very high.
In all sincerity, when you mentioned the word classical children's literature, written by Nigerians, my mind went to a lot of the books we read while at school, and the copies I was able to find were copies I had, but I'm not surprised that Farida says when she actually does have copies of these classic books, they run out immediately. Because if I know she has copies of it, me too, I'd be asking her to keep a bunch for me. Because, and I don't know if we've touched on this particularly, what we define as classic. It would be lovely to hear what you all have to say about what is defined as classic Nigerian literature.
Who would you like to throw that question to?
Adeshola.
Okay, how y'all going?
Hi.
Okay, so for me, I mean, over time, looking at all the children's picture books that we've seen and we've all heard of, we find that we have more books that are termed classics that are not written by Nigerians. More books like books written by authors 30 years ago, and they're still in high demand. You know, we have so many of those books that even the authors are no longer alive, and their books are really, really selling out. We have those kind of books, and I want to believe that that's what we want to term classics as. those are the books that you call classics. Books that have stayed for 10 years and above, books that have stood the test of time, books that are always in high demand because people always want those kind of books. Those are the kind of books that I would term as classics. Books that our parents read, their grandparents read, those are the kind of books. Yes, because abroad they are able to come up with a number of books. I mean, you won't run out of titles. You find out that you have like 10 of those books that are termed classics for books that are not written by the Nigerians. But look at this. In the last how many weeks we've been cracking our brains and thinking, looking for books that are classics, written by Nigerian. And now we took it a notch higher, saying for below 7. That's virtually impossible because there's nobody catering for that age category. That age category just started getting catered to in these early 20s, and we're getting books and we're getting authors. They're all upcoming. So in the next 10 to 20 years, then we can start talking about classics for Nigerian books for ages 7 below. So that is my own opinion on that topic.
So, yes, Temiloluwa.
Okay, so hello everyone. Well, when you asked us to review classics this week, it was easy to find classics for older children above 8 years. When I heard the category is like under 7, I made like a detour back to my childhood and I asked myself, what books did I read between the ages of 3 and 6? I went down memory lane, and in my head I was like, the only book I can remember reading were Janet and John series. I practically was someone that foraged my mom's school library. She had a school library and where Islam, Ibadan. So practically, I was a VP Akkad's daughter. I don't think there were any books I read between the ages of 3 and 8 apart from Janet and John. So I began to ask myself, did they really exist? I asked 1 or 2 people as well. I think I asked Farida classics between 3 and 8. So the only ones we could find were either the ones that had been written recently or were written for basically not our own African climb and all that. So I don't think any existed. That's the truth, because I asked myself, I think it's just the Janet and John series that's still in existence by Pearson that we really had in those days. So I'm glad that contemporary authors are doing something to ensure that age gap have books that that children 20 years to come, 30 years to come will be proud of, and they will be classics, because I know many of them will still review in their days and all that. So there'll be something they can fall back on and call classics. But for us, wow, I don't think we had African books that are good, We had some, I believe, but I guess maybe schools didn't just use them. I mean, the good schools didn't use them because maybe they were not the kind of books that the children of nowadays, pictorial, having all the elements that make a good book and all that. So I'm glad we are talking about this. I'm glad we are awakening the consciousness of authors and the literary
readership.
Readership, that this is of the essence because it's still part of history. I know it'll bring a lot. There's a lot of history to be learned in classic books, especially written in contemporary style. There's need for that. So I'm happy we're doing this.
Thank you for that contribution. Okay, goodness. What do you think when I sent that topic to you about your perception of children's literature for children under the age of 7?
The perception I had about children's literature, like under 7, literature that has African culture, the history, books that represent Africa as a country, and books that talks or have stories on folklore and things like that. And we have quite a number of such books, but like other speakers said, they've not stood the test of time. Like most of them are within like 5 to 8 years. Those ones I know, and those ones that have stayed like 10 to 15 years are for older children. There's a book I read on African Christmas. It was written not so recently anyway, but it took us back. It took us back to what happened like 30 years ago or 40 years ago during Christmas time. Face in the libraries, when we have such as we see them as potential classical books. The issues we now have is the reproduction of those books. Now I've seen books like that, African Christmas, the girl with the afro, like I told you, like telling the Rapunzel story in an African way. We've seen such books, but it's just the reproduction. Okay, when we've ordered and we go to order again, it's not available. We don't get more copies, and the authors don't reproduce, like make newer versions, edited versions, or add pictures, or make it more colorful for these children. So I think that the issue we have here is we actually have some of those books, but reproducing them, like to make them available all the time. And even the old ones, like the Arabian Nights, the Without a Silver Spoon, and things like that, there is no reproduction. Like those authors are no longer available. Some are dead, some are no longer writing, but the young authors are not producing such books. We have Western authors, for instance, this Oliver Twist, like the Charles Dixon series. I've seen them in different versions from different publishers, but it's telling the same story. So we do not have such thing here in Nigeria, where an old book maybe can be written after getting the adequate permission from the copyright agencies and reproducing such books. But that's my view.
Oh, well, a well-rounded perspective. What we have come up with is potential list, because we know the classicals have to do with time, they have to be tested, and so we might go through a list that we could call potential classical children's literature. Obviously, it's not our role to determine what is classical, but we get a feeler from other people. So thank you for being a part, and thank you for watching this as a playback. So what we're looking at today will be potential classical children's books. I grew up with the Ladybird series in the UK. When I came to Nigeria, I started reading Queen Primer, and I knew that there was a difference. I needed to see myself in books because I had seen myself as being different already. But for children that grow up with English books, they already see themselves in those books. They're not questioning it. This is what is being presented from a young age. No one has told you that your race is different, that your color is different. So you're just reading it because these are the proper books. But I had seen that I was different. So when I came to Nigeria, I needed to see books that were like me, which I did not see. So when we come back, we will look at what you brought into the room and consider as potential classical children's books. Okay, so let's give ourselves a 5-minute break. See you in 5 minutes.